Coming up on this episode, are we seeing the first signs of playoff Jimmy Butler, the rise of Gui Santos and what that may mean for the Warrior rotation moving forward, plus Trayce Jackson-Davis gets some much-needed opportunity and impresses in the G League. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Hope you're all having or had a good weekend, depending on where you may be and when you're listening to this. A bit of a mixed weekend for me as I sit here on a Monday morning. Obviously, it was great that the Warriors were able to get a victory over the Detroit Pistons at Chase Center on Saturday night US time, but I followed that into my AFL team, Collingwood, a pretty disastrous 52-point loss in opening round of the AFL season, which was mightily disappointing. I thought we'd probably win, not comfortably, but I thought we'd win, and we were favourites to win, and we got done very easily. And I mean, for NBA fans or American sports fans who obviously don't know too much about the AFL, I'd say the equivalent of the NBA and the AFL, like usually I think, this game for Collingwood losing by 52 is basically the equivalent of a 26-point loss. Like I think the margin kind of doubles or halves kind of thing. So I'd say, 52-point loss is the equivalent of a 26-point loss in an NBA game, which is obviously very, very disappointing. And it wasn't great to watch. And I forewent a post-game live in order to watch what was a pretty miserable performance from my AFL team. But we're here to talk about the Warriors, and that is much more positive because they were able to grind out a 115-110 victory over the Pistons. Wasn't pretty, a game full of the whistles just being blown every 2 seconds by the referees. I think both teams shot a combined 77 free throws. Very, very, whistle-happy game from the refs. Very, very physical, and neither team were really able to gain any momentum throughout the game. The Warriors started beautifully, 9-0 run to start, forced an early Pistons timeout, but Detroit came out and responded with 8 straight points. And from then on, I think Detroit were in front for the majority of the game, yet I think their biggest lead was like 6. Like neither team really got away from each other, and it came down to the final possessions there where the Pistons had the 2-point lead, and then Draymond Green, the unlikely offensive hero, hitting the wing 3 with 35 seconds left. Moses Moody coming up with a big steal on Cade Cunningham, who was huge for Detroit. He gets the loose ball, gives it to Draymond. Draymond goes 1 of 2. Draymond then comes up with a big defensive contest on, I think it was Malik Beasley's potentially game-tying 3. Ball until gets to Steph, and the Warriors close it out, win by 5. So wasn't pretty to watch, wasn't easy, wasn't comfortable, but at this point in the season, doesn't really matter. I had a mate message me yesterday, he's a Thunder fan, and he said, imagine struggling that hard at home just to beat Detroit. And I said, well, mate, Detroit entered this game winning 11 of their past 15 games. Like, this team is good. We've got to remember that. And I think some people might still view the Pistons as this like not good team in the Eastern Conference, and we've got to change our thinking on that. And in doing so, we've got to understand this is a pretty good victory for the Warriors, particularly on the first game of a 7-game homestand where there can be a little bit of a letdown following the 5-game road trip. So at this point, it doesn't matter how it's done, as long as there's a W in the win-loss column at the end of it. That's all that matters, and it makes sure that the Warriors retain hold of the 6th seed in the Western Conference standings. Still a tight race behind them. And I think they're still within 3 games of the Rockets, who won yesterday as well, but there's still time here to potentially move up. Just in terms of this game, I suppose it was the veteran trio again. Draymond with his huge plays down the stretch. Steph had a team-high 32 points. Wasn't overly efficient from the floor, but another big game from Steph as he continues his impressive form here over the last couple of weeks since the All-Star break. And Jimmy Butler had his career high with the Warriors, 26 points, 9 of 17 shooting, 2 of 4 from three-point range. I think went 6 of 7 from the free throw line again after going 10 of 10 against the Nets on Thursday. Big performance from Jimmy. Also had 9 rebounds and 5 assists. And I think this was, and Steve mentioned it in the post-game, this was maybe the first signs of playoff Jimmy here. We've seen how much he's impacted the Warriors since his arrival, but he's done so without any of these big scoring dominant, games. Like he had that debut game with 25 points, but he only averaged, I think, 16 through his first 10 games, shot 44% from the floor, wasn't shooting the ball well at all from 3-point range, started out 2 of 20 in his Warrior tenure to begin with. So wasn't like he was impacting, but it wasn't necessarily done through huge scoring performances. In the last 2 games, the 25 against the Nets on Thursday, and this game 26 against the Pistons on Saturday. Like it's not huge 35-point outbursts, which hopefully we'll see a couple of those. But I think it is a sign that he's starting to round into some form. The fact he was able to have 15 points alone in the third quarter, where he didn't take over the game because Cade Cunningham was doing the same on the other end and keeping the Pistons in the hunt as well, and actually keeping the Pistons in front. They led by 3 at halftime, still entered with a 3-point advantage entering the fourth. But if it wasn't for Jimmy Butler, the Pistons might have easily entered the fourth with a double-digit lead, and then the result of this game is a very different story. So Jimmy was huge, particularly in the third quarter, and the fact he was able to take over offensively, I think, is another sign that we're seeing the first signs here of him rounding into his best form. So that was really impressive and a huge positive. And I think in terms of the playoff Jimmy aspect to this, I think if you look at the numbers, like some of the 3-point stuff is actually, a huge factor in the playoff Jimmy mantra, I suppose. He's, I think, averaged between 3.5 and 4 3-point attempts in each of his last 3 postseasons, which is up from, he generally takes around 2 3-point attempts per game in the regular season. So his ability to take and make 3-pointers in the postseason certainly lifts. And I think that's something we would like to see entering the playoffs here, is Jimmy starting to take and make some more threes. And we've seen that over the last 2 games. He's gone 3 of 5, 1 of 1 against the Nets, but then 2 of 4 against the Pistons. And the fact he was able to take 4 3-point attempts, he's going to be, getting some wide open ones, and his ability to take those and make them and capitalize on that spacing is going to be a huge key for the Warriors over the remainder of the regular season and then pushing into the playoffs. So it was great to see Jimmy Butler. Steve said that, this was a game that was kind of suited to him with all the physicality and stuff like that. Still some weird plays like that. Was it the second quarter he missed that layup where he didn't even draw iron? And I was watching the game with a mate, and I was like, I nearly jumped off the couch. I was like, what is he doing? And I don't know if it was a factor of, I think he was trying to draw contact, and then the contact never came, and then he just stuffed it up completely. Maybe it's just the Warriors thing. We know the Warriors struggle with making layups, but to see Jimmy Butler perform the way he did yesterday, I think is a huge thing for the Warriors going forward, because needless to say, the Warriors are going to need playoff Jimmy if they want to, go on a deep postseason run here and perhaps make some significant noise in the Western Conference. The unsung hero of this game, we had the veteran trio of Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond, but the unsung hero of this game was most certainly Gui Santos, who continues to impress. The 22-year-old forward, finishing with 15 points and 6 rebounds, did foul out of the game late in the final 75 seconds or so. Otherwise, would have closed the game. And 15.6 rebounds is a great stat line to begin with, but it's not even that. Like it's the ability to impact the game. I think he finished with a team high plus minus. Was he plus 13, plus 12 or something like that? I think he's plus 38 now over the last 3 games. In the last 3 games, the Warriors haven't necessarily dominated. They won by 12 against the Knicks, I guess, but they were down by 7 or 8, I think, at halftime in that game. They only just get over the Nets by 2. They only just get over the Pistons by 5 here. So the fact Santos is a plus 38 now over the last 3 games really goes to show you his impact and his ability to make these hustle plays, be a connector, be able to contribute in a variety of different ways, whether it's defensively, hustling for extra possessions, offensively. He's doing so many different things. And Steve said after the game, and I think this is maybe the biggest aspect to come out of the game, is even with Kuminga's imminent return here, Gui Santos is still going to have to play. And I think you guys that listen or watch these podcasts or the post-game lives, you guys know that I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that when Kuminga comes back, I'd imagine that Gui Santos' minutes would probably disappear. Well, he's pushing an irresistible case for that not to happen, because this guy is impacting the game in a way that you must simply have him on the floor for some minutes during a game, the 20, 25 minutes a game that he's getting. And it makes for a really interesting and fascinating scenario when Kuminga does return here. Just an update on him. Sounds like he could. The new date, I think, that might be in mind is Thursday against the Sacramento Kings. The Warriors play tomorrow against the Portland Trail Blazers. And then I think I'm just going to double check. I think it's Thursday against the Sacramento Kings. Warriors schedule. Yes, it is Thursday against the Sacramento Kings. So they've got a few days off in a row here. That gives Kuminga more opportunities. Steve said that he scrimmaged yesterday before the game, looked good. So doesn't sound like he will play tomorrow against the Trailblazers, but Tim Kawakami of the San Francisco Standard did kind of tweet out and suggest that Thursday against the Kings could be a return for Kuminga, which would be interesting because the Kings obviously are a playoff in the playoff battle right now, a rival of the Warriors, only a couple of games behind them. I think there's 2 games between the 6th seed Warriors and the 9th seed Kings. So even though Golden State keep winning, they've won 11 of 13 now. They've won 4 in a row. There's still teams on their tail, and they still need to keep winning to ensure a top 6 spot. And the Kings are certainly hunting them. And the fact that Kuminga will come, not will, but could come back against a team that is, fighting alongside them for a playoff spot, that's going to throw him straight into the fire. The Warriors aren't going to be able to afford him to come out and play 15, 18 bad minutes on Thursday against the Kings, because that could lose them the game. And ultimately, it could come down to 1 or 2 games at the end of the season. And so any loss at the moment, that could be the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, or, having to play in the playing tournament or not. So this is the thing, Kuminga, yes, they want him to get back to fully 100%, 110% healthy, but who he comes up against, I think it would have been nicer to maybe have his return game against a softer opponent. Warriors don't have too many soft opponents coming up here now. Even the Blazers, if he was to play tomorrow, even Portland aren't necessarily a soft opponent at the moment, the way they're playing. So it's going to be interesting to see with Kuminga's return, but particularly when he gets off his minutes restriction, which I'm sure there'll be a number of games where he's on a minutes restriction. But once he's off that, how does this rotation work out? Because all the role players are playing really well at the moment. Like I spoke about Gary Payton II last episode and how well he's playing at the moment. Wasn't necessarily great yesterday against the Pistons, but has otherwise played really well. And you look at all the role players are really, maybe aside from Buddy Hield, but even then, I think we tend to forget Buddy Hield does so much. That's a bit critical. I'm going to say he does, have a lot of games that are not good. Let's put it that way. And I do think they tend to gloss over some of the good stuff that he does. And we've got to remember, a week ago, he had a team high 22 points against Charlotte, backed that up with 15 against the Knicks. So he's had 2 stinkers in a row here against the Nets and the Pistons. Does Buddy Hield get removed from the rotation entirely? I don't know. But Gui Santos is certainly deserving of his minutes at the moment. A couple of those plays, I think, were real difference makers. The block on Jalen Duren was just stupid. I couldn't believe what I saw. I was surprised the ref didn't call a foul, because when he went up, I was just okay, he's going to try and stop him from making a dunk, and he'll foul him in the process. And then he went up, got it clean, and the whistle never came. I was okay, I'm going to have to watch this on replay, because I just could not believe that he blocked Jalen Duren clean in that scenario without fouling him. So that was just an extraordinary play. And then the and one layup off the Steph Curry missed 3 halfway through the 4th quarter, where he outbattled Asar Thompson on the O board, kind of had one arm held down and then finished with the other hand. That was remarkable. And obviously he really got the crowd going, and the crowd revved up after that play. It kind of got put to the side a little bit, which is unfortunate, by the fact that Beef Stew kind of got into it with Steph over near the Detroit bench, which was just completely stupid. And I don't know, that was always going to kind of backfire in Isaiah Stewart's face a little bit. And, Steph didn't necessarily go off at all after that, but the Warriors got the win at the end of the day, so they can have the last laugh in terms of that little feud there between Isaiah Stewart and Steph Curry. But some of the stuff Gui did was absolutely fantastic. And the Warriors really now have, like, when Kuminga comes back, we've got to, remember Pods missed yesterday's game as well. So there's another, 30 minutes there. They've basically still got 11 guys. Like, they've got Steph, Pods, Butler, Moody, Dre, Kuminga, Santos, Hield, Post, Peyton, Looney. Like, that's 11, right? And you're not going to be able to play 11 in the playoffs. You're not going to be able to play 11, in must-win games here down the stretch of the regular season. So what happens here? Who's out of the mix? It's really going to go by game basis, I think, and who you're playing against, what the situation calls for. Does Buddy Hield get removed entirely? I just don't think Steve will do that. Does Looney get removed entirely? I think if you were doing it on merit in terms of who deserves to play, Looney might be in trouble, but I just don't think they're going to go with a little bit of Quentin Post and then a heavy Draymond Green small ball 5 minutes. I don't think they're going to do that. I still think Loon's going to play a role here. GP2's been playing well. Quentin Post obviously brings his element, it was really fascinating to see when Gui fouled out yesterday. They brought Quentin Post into the equation, right? And I was like, wow, okay, so final 70 seconds here. Game was basically tied at that scenario. I think the Warriors might have been up 1 or something like that. They brought Quentin Post in, and right away, Jimmy kind of drives down the lane, help comes, Quentin Post is wide open in the corner, and he must be 50% on those shots on the season. You'd be confident of him knocking that down, but in that scenario, tight game, final minute, he airballs the 3, right? And that was kind of okay, is this rookie big? Is it worth having him out there in those moments, right? He was always going to get that opportunity in terms of, I think opposing teams would bet on saying, okay, you're a rookie big, you still played less than 30 career NBA games. We're going to, you might be a 40+% 3-point shooter, but we're going to leave you open, see if you've got the balls to knock that down, basically, and he missed it badly. So, hopefully that's a learning experience for him. Hopefully he can take his next opportunity. Just quickly on Quentin Post, so didn't have a great game necessarily yesterday, but what I really did like was early on, he got the start with Pods out, which I liked. I think, Steve going big in that scenario, I think was the right decision, so I liked that. But what I really liked was a couple of his early baskets where he actually rolled a couple of times rather than popped and finished little flip floaters kind of thing just inside the free throw line. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a really, really big element here to me. If he's got that in his game, if he's got these little floaters, kind of those shots that if you look at a guy like Ivica Zubac, now Zubac doesn't extend out to jump shots whatsoever, but he has these little push shots from just inside the free throw line. And if you've got that in your game and you're highly efficient on those shots, that's pretty hard to stop, particularly when you're Quentin Post and you also shoot 40+% from 3-point range, right? Because if you look how many times does TJD or Loon get the ball in that scenario at about the free throw line? Even Draymond, right? And none of those guys, none of them have that kind of little flow. Draymond will try it occasionally, right? Not highly efficient on it, I wouldn't have thought. TJD and Loon, they're more likely to try and barrel in. Particularly TJD is more likely to try and barrel in and get a layup. Again, hasn't been overly efficient with that this season. So to me, even though it was only 2 buckets at the start of the game, that was something that raised my eyebrows. I was like, okay, all right. If he can do that, along with the 3-point shooting, along with some of the rebounding stuff, hopefully his defense develops. That's another specific skill to me, which could be a real difference maker, right? If he can roll and finish those as well as pop and hit threes, that's something that Warriors really, really have. So even though it was not his best game, he got into a lot of foul trouble. He had 5 fouls himself. I mean, a lot of players are in foul trouble in this game. So even though Quentin Post wasn't great, those 2 shots early in the game, that got me going. That was okay, that's something. This is something to move forward here with if he's got that in his game, as well as all the other aspects. So credit to Quinton Post on that one. But on this rotation, it's gonna be tough for Steve. Like, we're coming back to a similar problem at the start of the season where, we were playing, Steve was playing 12 guys at the start of the season. It kind of worked out well, but it was ultimately unsustainable. Now it feels a lot more sustainable because you've got the higher end talent with Jimmy there. You've got Kuminga to come back. I don't know what happens here. I don't know. Like, I think Looney, Hield, and Payton. Like, I think Santos might have gone past Hield, Looney, and Payton to me in terms of, okay, now he's like top 8 in the rotation, you'd say. Him and Moody are interesting to me because they're similar sorts. They're going to be playing similar roles. So how much they those minutes get, dispersed is interesting to me. The Warriors now have a lot of these, and it's really good. It's a good thing. They have a lot of these 6'6" to 6'7" forward types who can play like the 3 and the 4, like Butler, obviously, Kuminga, obviously, Santos, obviously Moody as well. So Payton doesn't really play as a guard. Like, he, with his inefficient 3-point shooting, has to play more as a front court option. So it's really going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. And that's without, thinking of a guy like Kevin Knox, right, who is no longer getting his opportunity. I don't think he will. Again, I think he'll stay on a standard contract, but I don't think he'll necessarily get his opportunity. A guy like Braxton Key, who I'll speak about soon in terms of the G League, he's putting up big numbers, another 6'8" forward type. So the Warriors all of a sudden have plenty of options for these rotation roles at the kind of 3-4 spot, and it's going to be interesting to see how Gui Santos fits into all of this, but there's no doubt he's deserving of minutes even when Kuminga returns, which is something that I didn't think was going to happen. I kind of thought to myself, okay, this is nice. He's providing energy, he's providing a boost right now, but Kuminga's ultimately going to be an upgrade. And I still think Kuminga's a better player than Gui Santos. I don't think anyone's questioning that necessarily, but you can certainly say that Santos is a better player than Buddy Hield or Kevon Looney or Gary Payton, and therefore should be getting minutes above those guys. But how, again, that works out with, a guy like Looney, again, you could say, oh, he should be out of the rotation, but to me, you're not just going to play Quinton Post and then all of, Draymond, a heavy portion of Draymond's minutes as a small ball 5. You're not going to do that. So I think he has to play as well. I don't know. We'll wait and see here. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments what you guys think in terms of the Warrior rotation. Of those 11 players, Steph, Pods, Butler, Moody, Dre, Kuminga, Gui, Buddy, Quinton Post, Payton, Looney, 2 guys. Which 2 guys do you think should be out of the mix? Right? To me, might be Buddy and Looney. Maybe. Don't know. But again, you got to play Looney. So it's tough. It's tough. Let me know what your thoughts are. Just quickly to finish up on Gui, Steph came out and said that he reminds him of Juan Toscano-Anderson a little bit, which is a comparison I think 1 or 2 of you guys have made as well. It's a comparison we've heard for a little bit now. I think it undersells him a little bit, and I've spoken about this previously. I think it undersells Gui's talent, to be honest, and the potential of where he could get to. I think he has a lot more offensive skill than Juan Toscano-Anderson did. I get it in terms of the hustle plays, some of the rebounding stuffs, the energy, the ability to connect. I get the comparisons from that perspective, but I think if you just look at it from an offensive skill standpoint, I just think Gui Santos has a lot more skill than Juan Toscano-Anderson did. He's also a lot younger, obviously, so starting young, you'd think he'd have more upside. He's a far better 3-point shooter, which I think is probably the biggest difference and ultimately why JTA didn't have that long of a career in the NBA. So that comparison, I get it, but I also think it undersells the talent that Gui actually possesses and what he could be here for the Warriors over the long term. Talking of JTA, he visited Chase Center here just a few hours ago, game completed a couple of hours ago, as part of the Mexico City Capitanes, who faced the Santa Cruz Warriors on Sunday afternoon US time. Good to see Santa Cruz, a strengthened Santa Cruz team, getting a win after 5 straight losses. Plenty of intriguing players that appeared in this one. Trayce Jackson-Davis, probably the most notable one, but we also had Pat Spencer, who's now, of course, on the main Golden State roster. He also played, and then two-way contracted guys, Braxton Key, as I mentioned before there, and also Taron Armstrong. Trayce, great to see him get some opportunity. I think this was a brutal but necessary call for the Warriors to make in terms of sending him down to the G League. Sounds like it's only going to be like a one-off game thing, and he's going to return and be available for Golden State tomorrow against the Portland Trail Blazers and moving forward. And we saw him even get a couple of minutes yesterday against the Pistons, which was interesting. Basically only came because both Looney and Post were in foul trouble early in the first half. So whether Trayce can get back in the rotation or not, we'll wait and see. He certainly didn't do himself any harm with this game in the G League, where he had 22 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks. It was a game high plus 26, which is great to see. Played 35 minutes, as I said, which is more than what he's played in the last 19 combined games for Golden State. So he just needed to play. Like, you can argue whether or not you should be sending a guy who started for you in 37 of the first 46 games. Should a guy like that really be sent down to the G League? Well, if he's not playing, like, that's what the G League's for, right? And so I think this was, again, harsh. I suppose Trayce was trying to claim this as an opportunity, not a demotion. I get where he's coming from. It also is like, it's pretty hard not to see it as a demotion. Like, you've gone from being the starting center to out of the rotation completely to now down to the G League. But he responded positively, and that's all you can do. Impactful on both ends of the floor. Had a bit of a back injury late there where he took a hard foul from JTA, so fingers crossed he's good to go and there's no issues there. But Steve said before the game yesterday that he'd wager that Trayce will get himself back into the rotation mix here over the final portion of the regular season. Well, I'm happy to be the bookie in that situation. If Steve wants to come to me and place his money on Trayce getting back into the rotation mix, I know it wouldn't make too much sense because he's the coach and he's the one making the decisions. But to me, I just don't see a way in which Trayce returns. And I know that's maybe harsh to say, and I know some of you guys like Trayce and would prefer him over Loon, and I get some of the reasoning behind that as well, but I just don't think that will be the case. And unless there's situations like yesterday where both Post and Looney are in foul trouble, I just don't see where the opportunity is going to come from. I think Post, you have to play him for what he brings to you in his diversity and his offensive skill set. And I just think Looney, come playoff time, Steve's going to prefer to play Looney over TJD. And so therefore, why bring TJD back now? Like late in the season when you're just going to play Looney in the playoffs anyway. Okay, so to me, I don't think Trayce is necessarily going to see his opportunity again over the rest of this season. Of course, there's always different situations that might come up. There might be an injury, there might be some foul trouble, and if he can come out in those brief, limited opportunities and play 5 or 6 minutes of really good basketball, then all of a sudden he could really put his hand up again. But he's going to have to need that little opening to kind of come forth for that to happen. I don't think even this performance in the G League isn't necessarily going to be enough for him to warrant legitimate rotation minutes going forward here without Looney or Post, at least one of those two guys being in foul trouble or getting an injury or something like that. So again, great to see Trayce get his much needed playing time and opportunity in the G League and making the most of that. But I don't think that's necessarily going to transition into him being back in the rotation in a meaningful way for Golden State here over the final, what have we got now, 18 games or so. Yeah, 18 games of the regular season. Elsewhere in this 118-107 win for Santa Cruz, Pat Spencer led the way, 25 points, was a team high. Also had 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. He also got a little bit of opportunity yesterday against the Pistons. I don't like it. He's not going to be part of the playoff rotation. And even when Pods is out, and I get it, but I'd much prefer like Jimmy running the show with, a bunch of wing types like Gui, like Moody, Kuminga when he's back, maybe, probably, maybe Quentin Post for that stretch 5 ability out there. I'd rather that. And particularly maybe you just play Jimmy and Draymond together, so you've got a couple of ball handling, a couple of playmakers there a little bit. what's stopping you? That five they put out early in the fourth quarter against Brooklyn on Thursday, where it was Jimmy, Moody, Gui, Draymond, and Post. Like, to me, that's a really intriguing five. I know there's no pure point guard on the roster, but I think with Jimmy and Draymond, there's probably enough there. Pods is going to come back anyway, so I'm not really sure. Like, Pat Spencer's not going to get minutes moving forward. He's an insurance policy. I'm not sure he's a great insurance policy necessarily, but good to see him put up big numbers in the G League today, regardless. Braxton Key continues to do his thing. Obviously had a couple of huge games against the Wisconsin Herd earlier in the week, just massive. What did he have on Friday? It was it 25, 14, 5 assists, 7 steals, and 3 blocks. Just like a stupid stat line in that game, which came after 30 and 13 rebounds, 3 steals on Wednesday. Not as much from a scoring standpoint here, but it's still an impressive two-way performance, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals in this game. And Taron Armstrong as well. Obviously, I'm going to be following him, close affiliation, given we are from the same state in Australia. The first Tasmanian player to make it to the NBA, so I'm going to be following him very closely. Obviously, Friday, his G League debut, missed his only 2 shots, went scoreless in that one, but did dish out 7 assists. Great to see him get on the board with a couple of threes in the first half here of this one on Sunday. Finished with 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, was 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 4 from three-point range. So an improved performance from Taron Armstrong, and I think we'll see him only build on that moving forward. Hopefully on this 7-game homestand, we see some of these guys potentially. They were all active yesterday, so if there was a blowout victory yesterday, we might have seen them. Obviously, that wasn't the case. It was obviously a close game down the stretch, but hopefully, tomorrow, I'm not sure what the plan is. I think the Santa Cruz play away on Wednesday or Thursday or later in the week, I think. So I'm not sure if these guys will be active tomorrow against the Trailblazers, but I wouldn't hate if the Warriors just would like to blow Portland out, have a 25-point lead entering the fourth, and then see us get some significant minutes here from the likes of Braxton Key, Taron Armstrong, just to see them in an NBA game. And particularly from my standpoint, again, to see a Tasmanian play NBA minutes would be a huge moment for our state. I was watching the local news last night, and they actually just mentioned the fact that he was practicing yesterday with Steph Curry and stuff like that before the game against the Pistons. So if he gets any kind of NBA minutes, Taron Armstrong, it's going to be a big moment for Tasmanian sport. There's no doubt about that. So fingers crossed that happens sooner rather than later. It'll obviously have to be in garbage time in a blowout win. Let's see if that can happen. Again, the Warriors play the Trailblazers tomorrow. Portland have been very good recently. Did lose to the Thunder most recently. Warriors should be able to get the win. Again, Portland are a threat. They are capable. But Golden State, the way they're playing, let's hope this machine can roll on and draw closer to the 4th and 5th seeds and potentially some home court advantage maybe in the playoffs, which would be a remarkable and shocking rise from where they were, I suppose, a month ago, right? A month ago where they were, almost below a 500 record basically, and 10th or 11th in the Western Conference standings. So they just need to keep winning, and we'll wait and see what this 7-game homestand has in store. Hopefully, Kuminga could be back on Thursday against the Sacramento Kings. I'll finish it up there. Thank you very much to those of you that have tuned in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. Appreciate you guys that are listening via your podcast feed as well. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. I'll be back for a post-game live after tomorrow's game against the Portland Trailblazers.